Hello, everyone, and welcome back. We are here for another episode of the Free Speech Forward podcast. And today I'm so delighted we have Sangeetha here to tell us all about her experiences, life story, perspective. As usual, I'm joined by my co host, Chris. And I have to say today, I'm very jealous because he's coming to all of us from Mexico City, and you can see it's snowing here where I am in New Jersey. But I think it's going to set up for a great conversation today. So, Chris, why don't you let everyone know more about Sangeetha and let's get started?
Great. Thanks, Joia, and thanks, Sangeeta, for joining
My
us.
pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Great. It's great. It's an honor to have you. And the beauties or the opportunities provided by modern technology, right? That we can do this from anywhere. So, as we always like to do, we like to give some background on our guests. So, Sangeetha Shankar is the California Regional Director for the Hindu American Foundation, or HAF. She's based in Sacramento and holds a bachelor's in engineering from Government College of Engineering, Pune University, India, and a master's in HR management from Rutgers University in New Jersey. With over 15 years of experience in education, HR, talent acquisition, DEI, and training across several industries. She's an educator who has supported K 12 families through webinars, conferences, and workshops in the US and India. At HAF, she spearheads education, advocacy, and community engagement across California. In education, she leads the outreach and training across school districts and law enforcement agencies. And in advocacy, she acts as a liaison between elected officials and Hindu American communities while building partnerships across interfaith communities. In community engagement, she facilitates community building and empowerment through high quality programming. Lastly, she's trained as an Indian classical dancer and an avid writer, contributing to the HAF blog Medium and LinkedIn on Hindu advocacy and practicing Hinduism. So, thank you with that background and how all that diverse experiences. Would love to hear how we start off with our first question always of how you came to being a advocate and leader for free speech.
Yeah, I think honestly, free speech came to me with my birth. I was raised in a culture and an environment of free speech. Growing up in India, and I come from a family of strong, outspoken women. My grandmoms, mother aunts, they said what they felt was right, and until date can give the men around them a run for their money, really. So it always felt like the way to be or the right thing to do. I was never shunned to speak up. But it was truly later in my life when I started parenting that free speech became really important for me when I started embarking on some very radical paths that felt true to me. I chose to become a homeschooling mother, which means that I chose to educate my children outside the regimented way of learning in schools, whether it was in India or in the US. And, this obviously led me to constantly justifying my reasons. It is a very radical path. This is not something that the Indian culture or the Hindu cultures are used to. But it also felt very true to me because I all wanted to raise my kids in the Hindu dharmas, which is basically Hindu spiritual traditions. Dharma means spiritual traditions, and this is where we practice our faiths in diverse ways. And I wanted them to be able to do that in a manner that felt logical to them, that felt right to them, instead of being hustled into the school system's way of thinking. And my culture also highly regards education. It highly regards inquiry, free speech as well. And
Mm.
this is when I think I had to constantly stand up for my choices, as well as constantly stand up for my children when they would be shamed or questioned about not going to school. And
Mm.
when I did this, obviously, I belonged to a larger alternate education community across the globe, more so in India. At that point in time, we were living in India because we had chosen to move back to the motherland for the diverse experiences that it brings to the children. And in that alternate education community, while it was very much accepted for who I was, whenever I would talk very proudly about my Hindu faith and identity. And interestingly, this was in India that I would be, kind of like sidelined. There would be this snark remark here and there, or somebody would say something that would shun that tradition or culture or practice. And I would feel like, what's going on here? Then this doesn't make any sense. But it does from when you look at it from a larger point of view, because alternate education community is about questioning dogma. It is about questioning the status quo,
Hmm.
but they're chosen to kind of like throw the baby with the bathwater, right? And that was not what my intention was. While I wanted to give my children lots of freedom in learning, I also wanted them to understand their true identity in terms of being a Hindu. And Hinduism, in its core, is all about freedom of inquiry, diversity of thought. So it never felt like I was doing anything that was contradictory to each other, but that was how it was perceived in the larger alternate education community. And so I think pretty much all my adult years, while I was raising the kids in an homeschooling environment, I was advocating for free speech for myself, for others who chose such paths, and mostly for the little ones who don't have that kind of voice, right, when surrounded by adults, especially when they're doing something that is considered radically different from other children or other families. And so I decided that I'm going to not stop talking about it, but also I'm going to take the time and the space to express myself in a manner that is kind and respectful. And I found my voice through writing, really. And I started microblogging on Facebook, on Medium, constantly sharing about my identity as a Hindu, spiritual traditions, practices, culture, etc. And this continued for many years. And really, I think connecting the dots, eventually fast forward to 2023, when I was in a career transition, because around 2016-17 I also went back to the corporate world and started dipping my toes in corporate roles. And in 2023 I was in a career transition, and that was when the SB 403 bill was introduced in California. And it is a racially profiling bill that alleged that South Asians have an implicit bias towards caste discrimination. And it attempted to codify caste into law under the protected category of ancestry to ensure that no such discrimination happens in the future. But what it would have really done would have that it would have boxed the Hindu communities into the oppressor oppressed framework, because we all know that California history textbooks or even popular media always have pushed one-sided narratives of Hinduism purely in the light of casteism, right? We are made fun of. We have this
Hmm.
exotic, culture and faith that does crazy things, and that is how generally people know of Hindus. And so, if the bill
Hmm.
had been implemented, it would have caused widespread racial profiling and targeting of a micro minority, that is the Hindus, and it would have stripped us of our freedom as professionals, students, or even entrepreneurs. And it would have especially projected us Hindus as castes who by default discriminate against others. And this was when I
Hmm.
really saw the extent to which free speech is subdued, is shut down by professionals. There is a group of, a wide network of really well paid academicians, artists, activists, entrepreneurs, supposed free speech people who are paid really well in the radical left to shut down voices like ours. And this is
Hmm.
when, like, I really was in the battleground. And I realized that as Hindus, we face caste issues all the time, and we're constantly shut down by the radical left. We are cancelled, we're marginalized, we're sidelined, ostracized. The moment we say, hey, I am a Hindu, and I do not only have the lens of caste, or I do not have the lens of caste at all, then there is no way I am considered to be a Hindu enough, right? And so, we are divided into this good immigrants, bad immigrants, supremacists, white adjacents, upper caste, impacting everyone, even all kinds of minorities, even within the Hindu community. And so I think that is what then led to my role in HAF, and this is now what I do as a profession, where I advocate for myself and my communities.
It's such an incredible story that you're telling, and part of me definitely resonates. Like someone who's planning to homeschool, my child's not ready for school yet, but it's definitely part of my vision. And I loved your story too of connecting the importance of freedom even within the religious tradition that you were brought up in, the way that that it harkens back to the deep traditional roots of freedom, and then to suddenly encounter yourself in a professional world, even in the United States, which supposedly is supposed to perhaps be more of a bastion of free speech, or perhaps that's what one would have thought, and then to have come up with all of these issues. So I'm curious then, what is your answer, your response to all of the people who want to suppress the views of the different individuals, whether they are the different Hindus, perhaps expressing their own particular religious or cultural viewpoints that go against whatever the official narrative is. Why would you say that it is so important for people to have free speech in order to flourish as both individuals and as societies and communities as a whole?
I think it is critical because that's the only way that we are the society that we are right now. Imagine if an Abraham Lincoln or a Martin Luther King had not spoken up, right? Imagine if our communities in which we lived never spoke up for each other, whether it is for a neighbor or for a friend. And so I feel like free speech is the default way for humans to survive and thrive. And specifically to me, it is very personal in terms of my faith. My Hindu dharmas celebrate the individual and the community. Freedom is central to our practice and spirituality. Debates, discussions are common and encouraged. We believe in multiple manifestations of the divine. We also believe that you can choose not to believe in the divine. So, whether you believe in God, whether you don't believe in God, Hindu dharmas are very accommodative and inclusive. And this is showcased by the fact that India is the country that has so many different religions that were not only born in India, but also chose India as their homeland. And so we have made tremendous progress in all sections of society, whether it's science or arts or philosophy, politics, literature, coming from this inclusivity that includes freedom of speech primarily. And on the contrary, we are also seeing across the world right now what happens when freedom of speech is shut down, right? Especially by radical religion, especially of women who are then told you need to be at home. These are the only specific rules that you have, and you cannot speak up. Those societies ultimately degrade, and they not only degrade, but they cause a lot of issues for everybody else. So, freedom of speech for everyone is important for each of us to thrive wherever we are, correct? And so if you see, for example, currently the issue with Israel and Palestine, what's happening post October 7th, it's like a ripple effect that is affecting each and everybody, right? And that is because freedom of speech has been completely shut down in the Palestine side of things. And what do people really want to say about being in the situations that they are? Nobody knows. And so I think freedom of speech is something that is very essential to all of us. And again, going back to my own radical choices of paths that are absolutely uncommon in my culture, my community, my families, has also been a reason for me to advocate for freedom of speech, because ultimately I had to get up and say, hey, I believe in this, or hey, I do not believe in this, and I'm okay saying that. And again, connecting the dots, it has also led to my finding this role in the Hindu American Foundation, which really speaks to my passion for speaking up for my communities.
Great, well said, and thank you for that. And we couldn't agree more that free speech is about individual thriving and flourishing, and also expressing yourself. We certainly agree that, as you said, I like that free speech is how humans would naturally express themselves, but it also does entail a degree of communication skill to be effective and kind of convey your positions, like you said, kind of needing to speak up for your own choices sometimes. So particularly given your experience and background as a writer and an activist, I'm curious if you have any insights you can share with our audience about how you prepare to communicate effectively and advocate for your beliefs, your values, whether it's preparing a piece of writing, a speech you might be giving, or any other form of communication?
Yeah, so I generally start by brainstorming ideas, whether it is for a writing piece, an article, or for a podcast or a speech. And I believe that the best thoughts are those that are truly expressed straight from the heart. They're genuine. I think the audience wants to know who you truly are. And that comes from sharing vulnerabilities. We all become hero from zero, right? And we go back to zero, we come back to hero. So it's a constant back and
Mhm.
forth. And so when we share that trueness of our human experience, then the audience definitely connects. And obviously being
Mm.
very respectful of the time limit, because none of our interactions are meant to be one time motivators, but rather a trigger for further collabs and conversations.
Mm.
And I love to listen to podcasts. The Hindu American Foundation, for example, has two wonderful series called as the That's So Hindu and All About Hinduism. And it gives me an idea of how to speak up for the issues that are dear to me in a manner that's kind and respectful, and also encourages dialogue. And I think finally in activism and leadership, it's really vital to connect directly to the issue, to not beat around the bush, because ultimately what you truly think is what people want to hear, and that could many a times mean upsetting lots of people, especially if we see in education, right? When we
Mm.
speak up, it is bound to upset people in the schools, or even educators or so-called academicians who think that they know everything. And so you should be okay with that. You should be okay with not being the person that everybody likes. And recently at the Stanford student protest that happened last year, post October 7th, when they called me to the stage and asked me as to why am I here? I'm not a Jew. I'm not from Israel. Why am I here? And I said, hey, I'm here because what's happening in the colleges bothers me as a mother, as a woman, and as a Hindu. And the audience really connected to that.
Mm.
And that's where you share your human experience across. And I think finally, also having clarity of the work that you do and the organization you represent is very, very important for me, especially when I'm on the ground as a leader. I'm super proud to represent the Hindu American Foundation. We truly walk the talk. We are a women led, lawyer led organization that has never shied from taking a strong call on issues that are near and dear to us, to the Hindu American community, and also the broader, larger American community and the Indian communities. And even within the organizations, I've seen that while we are all working for the same issue, there is a lot of encouragement towards expressing different ways of doing things. Dialogue and debates are encouraged, and so that just reflects then in the way that I speak when I'm on the ground.
I really appreciate this approach you have. It's Chris and I always talk about having a both and approach, and I hear that here. That on the one hand, you're talking about the importance of speaking from the heart, of being kind, of being respectful, of being in dialogue with others, and at the same time of being direct, bold, courageous, not backing down, of really being forthright in standing up for what you believe is true, and bringing those both together, I think, is just a beautiful way even of capturing what free speech is all about. It's about kind of having that genuine self-expression and not being afraid to get out in the world and share it with others. And I think it ties beautifully and leads us into our very last question, because we know there are some people who perhaps feel that desire to be able to express themselves but have trouble finding the courage, especially in the current cultural atmosphere we live in, where free speech is not encouraged. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on what perhaps people can do to find their voice, to have that courage to stand up and speak out for what they believe in.
Yeah, I think my first message would be that nobody is alone. You're not alone. And it's very important to find your
Mm.
community, the wind beneath your wings. For me, it's always my organization, the Hindu American Foundation. It always has my back. And also know that there are lots of people doing this. For example, right now in California, an issue that we are facing is politicization of the classroom, right? Where students are pitted against one another and subconsciously, being chiseled at in terms of what they think is equality. And so there is literally like a revolution right now happening in the classrooms, and people are being marginalized, sidelined, and so everybody's voice is so important right now. For example, we are fighting the ethnic studies misrepresentation, whether it is with the Jewish communities or whether it is with the Hindu communities. We are either misrepresented or absolutely unrepresented. And so when you think that you want to speak up, know that there are lots of people who need you to speak up, right? And also from a homeschooling journey, I've learned that, people generally go from ridiculing you to admiring you if you choose to be honest to your cause and really doing what feels right to you. At the end of the day, you should be able to look at the mirror and say, hey, am I being an authentic human being? Am I living my authentic life? And if that means sometimes being cancelled out on social media, or being, not somebody that everybody likes, so be it. But also know that there is a very big group of community that most likely also agrees with what you have to say and really needs your voice. So speak up. Yeah.
Wonderfully put. It's a great period to the end of this great conversation, because that is certainly what we're all about with Free Speech Forward podcast, promoting that view of standing up, speaking out, and finding your voice. So thank you so much for your time, Sangeeta. It's been great to speak with
Yes.
you. And yep, and if you'd like to learn more about Sangeeta's work and HAF, you can find them at hinduamerican.org is their website. And as always, we'll see you in 2 weeks. You can find our podcasts on most major podcast platforms under ILB's Dissidents page, or at our website, 1776forward.com or ilvalues.org. Thank you. See you next
Thank
time.
you. Bye.
Bye bye. Thanks,
Bye.
Sangeeta.